The sun blazed mercilessly over the wide, windswept plains, turning the dust into shimmering waves that rolled. Across the horizon like a restless sea, the ranch stood alone in that emptiness, surrounded by weather-beaten fences, abandoned wagon wheels, and the soft creak of old posts pushing against the dry breeze. It was there at the northern fence line that rancher Cole Maddox stood facing a scene he had never expected to witness in his life. A young Apache woman, rope-bound, wounded, defiant, was tied to one of his fence posts, her dark braids falling against her bruised shoulders, her eyes shining with fire instead of fear. Cole had found her that morning, slumped on the boundary line, barely conscious, exhausted from running who knew how far. She had tried to push herself up when she heard his footsteps, but she had collapsed again, too weak to fight. Following protocol, he had tied her wrists and arms to keep her still until he knew who she was, what she wanted, and whether she was a danger. But the more he looked at her, the cuts on her arms, the swelling bruise on her shoulder, the dried blood that had trickled down her neck, the more one thing became painfully clear: someone else had already been a danger to her long before she ever stepped foot on his land. When she finally regained her strength enough to meet his stare, her voice came out hoarse but steady. "Do whatever you want, cowboy," she said, lifting her chin with a bravery that surprised him. "I have nothing left to fear." Cole froze, not because of the words, but because of the emptiness behind them. He'd seen fear before. He'd seen defiance. But this was different. This was someone who had survived too much, someone who had lost too much, someone who no longer cared what happened next. And for the first time in a long time, Cole Maddox felt a shift inside him, something heavy, something protective, something he didn't quite understand. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said quietly, taking a small step closer. She didn't look away. She didn't flinch. She only breathed harder, her chest rising against the ropes with effort. "Men say that," she whispered. "And then they do." Her words hit him like a blow. Cole raised both hands to show he meant no harm, then slowly loosened the rope just enough to ease the pressure on her ribs. She winced as blood rushed back into her arms. He expected her to lash out, to spit, to curse him. Instead, she did something far more unsettling. She looked at him with confusion, almost suspicion, like she was trying to understand why he wasn't behaving like the monster she had known. "What happened to you?" Cole asked, his voice barely above the sound of the breeze. She hesitated. Her jaw tightened. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. "White mercenaries," she finally said. "3 men. They burned my village. My people scattered. I ran." She glanced down the riding trail behind the fence line. "They're still looking. They don't leave witnesses." Cole felt his pulse quicken. Mercenaries weren't just dangerous, they were ruthless. If they were after her, they were headed this way. And his ranch, sitting wide open across the plains, was the perfect target for anyone. Desperate, armed, and cruel. "You're not safe out here," Cole muttered, scanning the horizon. "And neither am I if they come through." Every instinct in him screamed to untie her, to bring her inside, to hide her before it was too late. But he knew the risks. Bringing an Apache woman into a ranch house, especially in a region already thick with tension and prejudice, was asking for trouble. Even neighbors he had known for years would turn on him in a heartbeat if they thought he was harboring someone like her, and yet leaving her tied to that fence, injured, exhausted, and hunted, was something his conscience refused to allow. She watched him silently, her breathing slower now, calmer. "Why do you look worried, cowboy?" she asked softly. "Because I want to help you," he answered. "But you don't trust me." She blinked twice, the faintest hint of surprise flickering across her face. "I trust no man," she said. "Trust keeps people alive," he replied. "Mistrust keeps people alive longer," she countered sharply. Cole couldn't argue with that, not after seeing the marks on her body, the evidence of cruelty she had endured. Then in the distance, a faint rumble rolled over the Iowa plains, hoofbeats, multiple, fast. Cole's hand immediately dropped to his holster. The Apache woman stiffened, her breath catching. "They found me," she said, her voice barely audible. Cole looked at her, really, looked at her, and in that instant, made a choice without hesitation. "Not today," he said. Without asking permission, without waiting for her approval, he began untying the ropes with a speed that betrayed his fear. She didn't fight him. She didn't question him. She simply held his gaze with eyes filled with something he had not seen before. Hope, fragile but real. As the final rope fell away, her legs buckled, and Cole caught her before she hit the dirt. He swung her arm over his shoulder, half lifting, half carrying her toward the ranch house. The hoofbeats grew louder, closer. Dust clouds rose on the horizon. She clung to him with the last of her strength, whispering, "Why are you doing this?" Cole didn't look back. "Because someone should have," he said. "And whatever happens next, we face it together." Behind them, the riders appeared like dark shadows cutting across the golden plains. And the chase, the danger, the unexpected bond between rancher and Apache woman, that was only the beginning. Cole pushed the door of the ranch house open with his shoulder, helping the woman inside before slamming it shut behind them. The wooden frame rattled under the sudden impact, dust falling from the ceiling beams as sunlight streaked across the worn floorboards. The woman struggled to stand on her own, her legs trembling from exhaustion, but she forced herself, upright with a stubborn dignity that Cole couldn't help admiring. "Sit," he insisted, guiding her toward the table. But she shook her head. "I will not hide like prey." "You're not prey," he said firmly. "Not while you're under my roof." Her gaze softened for the briefest moment before she finally lowered herself into a chair, breathing heavily. Cole moved quickly, grabbing his rifle from the wall, checking the chamber, loading 3 extra rounds. Outside, the ground trembled with the approaching riders. No longer distant, no longer uncertain. They were coming straight for his ranch, straight for her. The woman watched him with a strange mixture of gratitude and disbelief. "You risk your life for a stranger," she murmured. "For an enemy of your people." Cole paused as he jammed another cartridge into place. "You're not my enemy," he said. "You're someone who needs help, and I'm someone who can give it." She studied him in silence, trying to understand the logic behind his choices, trying to understand why this cowboy, this man who owed her nothing, would place himself in the path of danger for her sake. "My name is Naira," she finally whispered. "If I die today, you should at least know it." Cole nodded. "Naira," he repeated softly, committing it to memory. "And I'm Cole," she nodded back. A bond, unexpected, fragile but powerful, formed in that quiet exchange of names. A shadow passed over the window. Then another. Then 3 more. Cole moved to the edge of the window frame and glanced outside. 6 riders, heavily armed, scanning the property with cold purpose in their eyes. The leader, broad-shouldered, scarred with a cruel smile twisted across his face, swung down from his horse and called out, "We're looking for something, Maddox, and we hear it pass through your land." Cole stepped outside slowly, rifle in hand but pointed at the ground. He needed to stall them, needed to buy Naira more time. Naira, despite her weakness, rose to her feet and moved to the door, peering through a narrow crack. When she saw the leader, her breath hitched. "That's him," she whispered. "He burned our village. He killed my brother." Rage surged through her, but she held herself back. She refused to cry, refused to appear weak. Cole walked toward the mercenaries, stopping several yards away. "There's no one here," he said calmly. "Just me." The leader smirked. "You're lying." Cole's grip tightened. "If I were," he said, "you'd already know." The leader stepped closer. "Move aside, Maddox. We'll check the house." Cole raised his rifle, not aiming, but making his warning clear. "You boys step foot on that porch," he said, "and this becomes a fight none of you walk away from." The air went dead still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Inside, Naira pressed a hand to the table to steady herself, her heart pounding. She knew Cole couldn't take on 6 armed men alone. She also knew she couldn't let him die for her. She scanned the room, spotted a hunting knife on the counter, and grabbed it. Her legs wobbled, but she forced herself forward, every step fueled by the memory of her people's screams, her brother's last breath, her village crumbling into flames. Cole stood firm, his eyes locked on the leader, refusing to back down. But he knew, deep down, that if they chose to fight, he would lose. And then everything happened at once. Naira burst through the door, knife raised, her voice ringing across the ranch yard. "I am here!" Cole whipped around in shock. "Naira, no." But she stood tall, ignoring the pain, ignoring the trembling in her legs. "You want a witness?" she shouted at the leader. "Come take one." The mercenaries turned toward her instantly, hands dropping to their guns. Cole moved faster than instinct, faster than fear. He raised his rifle and fired first. The leader staggered back, clutching his shoulder. Chaos erupted. Gunfire cracked through the air. Horses reared. Dust exploded upward. Cole grabbed Naira's wrist, pulling her toward the water trough. "Get down!" he yelled. She dropped beside him, covering her head as bullets tore through the fence. Cole fired again, hitting one mercenary, then another. The others panicked. They hadn't expected resistance. Not from a lone rancher and a half-injured woman. Within minutes, the surviving riders fled, dragging their wounded leader back onto a horse before disappearing across the plains, leaving behind only silence and the smell of gunpowder. Cole lowered his rifle with trembling hands. Naira stared at him in disbelief. "You saved me," she whispered. Cole looked at her, dust coating his hat, sweat streaking his face. "No," he said softly. "We saved each other." Naira's eyes glistened, not with pain, but with something far deeper, something that softened her entire expression. Trust. Real trust. Something she had never expected to feel again. "What happens now?" she asked. Cole offered her his hand, steady and warm. "You heal," he said. "You stay as long as you need. And when you're ready, you decide your own path." She placed her hand in his, her fingers curling gently around his own. "Thank you, Cole Maddox," she whispered, "for returning my life to me." The sun dipped lower on the horizon, painting the sky gold as the danger faded behind them. For the first time in months, Naira felt safe. For the first time in years, Cole felt purpose. And together they walked back toward the ranch house. Two lives changed, forever by a single moment, a single choice, and a bond no enemy could break. If you enjoyed this story and want more powerful Western tales, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring more stories like this to life.